Mangfu Player Introduction. Evolutionary Game comes to Earth, where extraordinary people roam the world. A competition beyond dimensions is unfolding, and a magnificent war is stirring up. This is a story of a reckless man rampaging through the battlefield of the heavens and all realms. Chapter 1. Funeral. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. Zhao Huixiang, 76 years old, is a native of Yangcheng, eastern Guangdong. She runs her family well, as a harmonious sister.in.law, and never does anything wrong in her life. Today, she dies peacefully, and her soul falls into the underworld. I hope that the second Lord Wuchang can protect her well and prevent lonely souls, wild ghosts, and passing beasts from harming her soul. Bang! Bang bang! Bang, bang, bang. Lu Shui sat beside her uncle, who was whispering to his second uncle. Her attention was not focused on their conversation, but on the spiritual hall outside the courtyard. Only a coffin was placed in the white and black mourning hall, with the children of the deceased kneeling next to it. They sat on grass mats, constantly bowing and kowtowing to those who came to offer incense. The Taoist, dressed in an unknown robe, shook his bell while singing in a strange tone. In Cantonese. After singing a section, the disciples or senior brothers of Dao Gong Lao would sound gongs and drums, making a noisy and piercing sound. Shui, Shui. Uncle called out twice before Lu Shui regained consciousness and looked at him in confusion. Grandpa asked you something. How is school? Are you still adapting? Lu Shui instinctively wanted to smile politely, but realized that someone had just passed away here, and that person was the wife of second grandpa. She immediately restrained her smile, pursed her lips, and nodded, "It's okay. You child." Uncle shook his head helplessly and turned back to whisper to the old man. At this moment, a figure entered Lu Shui's line of sight from the afterglow. That person doesn't seem to be compatible with this family at all. Even though it's already autumn, he's still wearing a white vest, revealing a pair of muscular arms. His thick back taunts the vest, revealing a faint tattoo on his back. Her second grandfather's surname is Li. Starting from his generation, the whole family has been intellectuals. For example, the middle-aged man kneeling in front of the left side of the coffin wearing black-framed glasses, her eldest cousin, is an associate professor of history at Zhongyue University. The second cousin with sparse hair is the attending physician, the serious-looking cousin is an accountant of a large company. It doesn't seem like we can get along well with that person no matter what. After offering incense to the deceased, the man wearing a white vest on his upper body, capris on his lower body, retro round-framed sunglasses on his face, and flip-flops turned around and walked over. Just as Lu Shui was full of doubts, her second grandfather grabbed the handrail and quickly stood up. Her uncle was shocked and quickly stood up to support her. Seeing this, the white vest also strode forward and bent down to support the old man. "Grandpa, what are you doing? Sit down and say, sit down and say." When this person walked up to her, Lu Shui truly felt his height. Even when she bent down, he was taller than when she was standing. The old man and the white vest both sat down because they had something to say, so my uncle gave him his seat and I found another chair to sit on the other side of the old man. "How old is grandma this year?" The white vest also speaks Cantonese. Although Lu Shui cannot speak it, she can understand it. She's just a bit strange. Even though she's here to pay tribute to the deceased, why doesn't she even know how old the deceased is this year? 76, the old man whispered as he tightly grasped the armrest of the chair. Upon hearing this, Bai Vest grinned and said, 76, it seems that the maintenance is good, and the children are also filial, right? The old man nodded and a hint of relief appeared on his face. I haven't done anything earth-shattering in my life. What makes me proud of the most is teaching a few sensible children. The eldest son is mature, the second son is intelligent, and the eldest daughter is the best to us. She comes back to see us every week. The white vest tilted its head slightly and nodded, saying, well. By the way, Grandma said, you want to share the property in the city with your daughter. Upon hearing these words, the old man's face immediately darkened and he said, who won't give it to the eldest daughter? The eldest and second sons have both bought houses, each of whom is richer than their elder sister. If it weren't for the sake of supporting them to attend university, the eldest daughter would now be a professor. I had to listen to her words and not let the eldest daughter continue her studies. Now I can't turn back, at least I have to make up for it. The white vest sneered twice, but Grandma said, don't listen to her nonsense. The old man waved impatiently and brought this matter over. Can you help me ask her if there are any other things she wants to do or unfulfilled wishes? Upon hearing this, Lu Xue and her uncle were both stunned. Suddenly, Lu Xue was startled and her hair stood up. She widened her eyes and suddenly remembered that when she spoke with her white vest, her head was tilted to one side and not facing her second grandfather. This was a very impolite behavior. But in fact, he was not facing second grandpa, but second grandma. Her second grandmother, who had just passed away and lay in the coffin. Lu Xue looked at the white vest in horror and asked a question to the air ahead, then nodded as if she had really heard something. White vest turned to look at the old man and said, Grandma said, she doesn't have much to do, she just wants to see her grandson marry a wife. It's a long time since we got married. We've been talking for 7 or 8 years and still haven't gotten married, what's that like? The old man seemed very satisfied with this answer and nodded. White vest smiled and said, Grandma has something else she wants to say to her grandchildren. Can you call them over now? Okay, Ah Cheng, go help call those boys and girls over. The old man turned to ask his nephew. Lu Xue's uncle looked at the white vest in surprise and didn't say anything. He got up and went outside to call his nephew and niece in. Subsequently, Lu Xue and her uncle looked at the white vest with the same skeptical gaze as their cousins. BaiEixin learned the tone of an old woman and said a few words to the young people. They may have thought of their recently deceased grandmother, and their eyes suddenly turned red, tears streaming down their faces, and the suspicion in their eyes gradually dissipated. The white vest spoke more and more, and several young people didn't feel annoyed, standing silently listening. After a while, my uncle turned to Lu Xue and whispered, don't talk later. No matter whether second grandpa wants to give money or something, don't say anything, understand? As we get older, just think for yourself. Don't care who that person is or whether they are scammers. As long as we don't give much money, don't interrupt. Lu Xue nodded, indicating that she understood. The white vest said a lot, but suddenly he had nothing to say. Alright, Grandpa, Grandma has nothing to say. I'll come again tonight, and I won't come after that. The old man, who suddenly became gloomy, advised with a white vest. Life and death are different. It's not easy for the dead to disturb the living too much. If the dead live with the living for too long, it will harm their bodies. Don't stay too long, Grandma. After your grandson receives the certificate and gets married, let's leave. Otherwise, it's not good for anyone. Halfway through, the white vest turned its head and said something to the air. Even though Lu Xue persuaded herself in her heart to think that this white vest was a scammer, seeing him do so still made her shudder uncontrollably. After listening to the words of the white vest, the old man sighed and reached into his pocket. He took out 2 red banknotes and put them into the white vest's hand. I see. Master Yang, thank you very much. Bai Vest put 200 yuan into his pocket and shook his head, saying, no, I can't be called a master. At most, I can see things that ordinary people can't see. It's just a bowl of rice with this ability. Alright, Grandpa and Grandma, I'll leave first and come back tonight. Waving his hand, the white vest turned around and walked out. A few young people stood still immersed in what had just been said. The old man furrowed his brow, then relaxed and let out a light sigh. Lu Xue looked at it and said, I'll go deliver it, then lowered her head and ran out, ignoring her uncle's low moans. This is a suburb which was only placed under the jurisdiction of Yangqing a few years ago and became part of it. Even so, there used to be very few people here in the past, but today, the streets outside are blocked and congested. Before retiring, Zhao Huixiang was an elementary school teacher who taught many students. Now, those hovering in front of the courtyard are Zhao Huixiang's students and neighbors. Lu Shui followed behind the white vest and quickly walked out of the courtyard to see him walking towards a human-powered tricycle, taking out the key and bending over to unlock it. Wait a moment. The white vest turned around in confusion and looked at Lu Shui. Lu Shui looked at the crowd around her and walked up to Bai Vest, whispering, "Can you really see ghosts?" Looking at her nervous appearance, she went to Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com with a white vest to unlock the car lock. She hung the car lock onto the railing behind the car seat, turned around and sat on the car seat. She asked, "What's up?" "That, I." Lu Shui hesitated and couldn't say a complete sentence. After a moment, she realized that she couldn't do this and closed her mouth. Taking a deep breath, Lu Shui took out her phone and asked in a muffled tone, "Can you add a WeChat message? I want to say it on WeChat." The white vest tilted its head and looked at the slightly green girl standing in front of it. After a while, it took out its phone from its pocket, opened the QR code business card, and handed it over. Lu Shui swept her phone and with a beep sound, a picture of a rural dog wearing sunglasses, smiling with its tongue sticking out, and an account nicknamed, "I like to eat beef belly powder at night snacks," appeared in front of her. With a slight pause in her breath, Lu Shui looked up at the white vest, her eyes full of doubt. Taking another deep breath, Lu Shui asked again, "Can you tell me your name?" "Yang Fu." Yang Fu grinned, and in the sunlight, Lu Shui realized that he had two slightly penetrating tiger teeth, with long pointed tips that looked more like the fangs growing from a tiger's mouth than human teeth. The poplar of the poplar tree, the fierce and fierce one. After introducing himself, Yang Fu sat in the car seat, stepped on his foot, and said, "If you have anything to talk about on WeChat, but let's talk about it first. I don't know how to exorcise ghosts. If you're looking for me to exorcise ghosts, why not go find a Taoist or monk? It's useless to find me." Without waiting for Lu Shui's answer, Yang Fu stepped on the pedal and the tricycle jumped out. Lu Shui's mouth slightly opened as she watched the tricycle go far away. She slowly put down her outstretched hand, and her melancholy climbed up her eyebrows again. Chapter 2. Players. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yes, yes, I will go. You can rest assured that you will never break your promise. Alright, don't say so much anymore, hang up. Under the cool night sky, Yang Fu, still wearing a vest and shorts, impatiently hung up the phone and stuffed it into his pocket. Stepping on the flip-flops and pedaling on the old tricycle pedals, the evening breeze blowing towards him did not make him feel any coldness. As soon as Yang Fu exhaled a breath of white air, he was torn into pieces by the hunting autumn wind passing by him. This autumn has arrived earlier than usual, and it's only mid-September when it starts to get cold at night. Insects are not accustomed to such abrupt seasonal changes and still chirp in the grass on the roadside. One after another, distant streetlights connect the roads between the suburbs and the countryside, and from time to time, an electric car or sedan passes by Yang Fu, bringing some vitality to this less quiet night. Yang Fu hummed softly and drove along this familiar road towards the countryside where his home was located. Soon, the singing stopped. Still stepping on the pedals with both feet, my eyes scanned the surroundings, especially the grass on both sides of the road. The tricycle drove forward for more than 10 meters, and a transparent and pale figure reflected in Yang Fu's eyes. The figure was facing away from him and slowly drifting forward. Yang Fu tilted his head for a moment, thought for a moment, and chased after him on a tricycle, asking, "Brother, can I help you with anything?" The transparent and pale figure heard the sound and turned to look at Yang Fu, with a surprised expression on its face. Ah, I heard there is a master in Tianxin village who can see ghosts. Are you that master? Yang Fu raised his eyebrows and came to find him. I can't be a master, I'm just a craftsman who relies on these innate yin and yang eyes to make a living. Yang Fu shook his head, this is not a good place to talk, and it's already late. If you have anything to say, you can come to my house and say, by the way, what's your name? Okay. The transparent and pale figure nodded quickly, with a smile on his face. Master, I'm Luo Fugue from the neighboring town. You can call me Lao Luo. Yang Fu nodded and said, okay, let's go. After speaking, he stepped on the pedal and the tricycle slid forward, with Luo Fugue following closely behind. So, Yang Fu returned home with a ghost. As a rural area located in the suburbs of the mega-city of Yangcheng, Tianxin village, like other villages, flows into the bustling city due to the urban siphon effect. Most of the residents of Tianxin village are elderly people and disabled people who have lost their ability to work. Yang Fu's home is a 3-story self-built house with a courtyard in front, surrounded by a towering wall. If placed in the past, this house could be said to be the best in the village, but it is older than Yang Fu. With the progress of poverty alleviation work, most of the houses in the village have been renovated, leaving only the towering walls that can give the house a sense of existence. Yang Fu parked the tricycle in the front yard and walked into the house with Luo Fugue. When it drifted in, he casually closed the iron door. Pop. Press the switch and the light will come on. The first-floor lobby is spacious, except for a wooden long sofa, a pair of tables and chairs, and a peach wood sword hanging on the sofa. There is only the statue of Guan Xingdi placed directly facing the door. The bronze statue stands with a knife in hand, a pair of bright and lively eyes staring straight ahead. In front of it is a copper furnace filled with incense ash, with a copper bell placed next to it, and a pair of couplets pasted on the wall behind it. On the left is written, Drive Spirit and Chase Shah, the one written on the right is Breaking the Disaster. Wait a moment. After speaking to Luo Fugue, Yang Fu walked up to the 8 Immortals table carrying the statue of Guan Gong, took out 3 incense sticks from under the table, lit them, and then bowed 3 times to the statue of Guan Gong before inserting them into the incense burner. Subsequently, he suddenly picked up the Sanqing bell placed on the table and turned to ring at Luo Fugue. Ding 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 ding. The crisp bell rang through the hall, and the sound spread, colliding with Luo Fugue's transparent form. Ah! Suddenly attacked, Luo Fugue's figure distorted like a TV screen with signal interference. Yang Fu took a big step and ran to the sofa. He jumped up and stepped on the sofa, picking off the peach wood sword hanging on the wall and chopping at Luo Fugue. At the same time, his mouth was still cursing. With a sinister air that can make insects rest 10 meters away, you can pretend to be your mother. Seeing his disguise exposed, Luo Fugue immediately opened his mouth and roared, lifting his hand to hold on to the peach and wood sword that was being chopped towards him. The peach wood sword was struck in Luo Fugue's palm, and he could never cut it down again. Yang Fu's face changed, but he saw the nail on Luo Fugue's other hand suddenly grow and wave towards him. Seeing that the situation was not good, Yang Fu quickly leaned back and avoided Luo Fugue's scratching. The 3 clear bells in his hand did not stop shaking. Even as he shook the Sanqing bell, Luo Fugue's ferocity remained undiminished. Without a single blow, he rushed forward and continued to attack him. Yang Fu panicked and dodged, but fortunately, the hall was spacious and there was room for him to dodge. At this moment, Yang Fu's brain was in chaos, and his spiritual body was able to push a tissue, which could be considered as strong spiritual power. Now, Luo Fugue is not only not affected by the peachwood sword, but also withstands his thunderous sword. What kind of strength is this? Luo Fugue screamed and turned around, catching up with Yang Fu. He swung his right paw, and even though Yang Fu hastily raised his sword, for bloodstains were left on the back of his hand. The pain woke Yang Fu up and he watched the wound that spread all the way down the peachwood sword to the back of his hand. He took a deep breath and rolled on the spot, avoiding the scratch of Luo Fugue's other paw. With a push of his legs, his curled-up body bounced towards the altar where the statue of Guangong was enshrined. "The young man is reckless, please forgive Guangong." After shouting, Yang Fu put down his peachwood sword, picked up the incense burner placed on the table, and threw it backwards at Luo Fugue. With a loud thud, the iron door was hit and made a loud noise, causing Yang Fu's heart to shiver. Because he saw that the incense burner had passed directly through Luo Fugue's body without harming him. The incense burner, which has been stained with incense for more than 20 years, is actually useless. Hee hee. Luo Fugue grinned grimly and waved his claws to charge forward. Yang Fu dodged again, and Luo Fugue's paw ran over the 8 immortals table, easily leaving 4 claw marks on the edge of the table. "I didn't take the peachwood sword in a hurry, and now I have nothing else in my hand besides the Sanqing bell that can cause damage to the spiritual body." Yang Fu felt a sudden jump in his temples, gritted his teeth, and turned to run towards the door. "I intended to shut the door and beat the dog, but I didn't realize that I was the one who was locked up." Yang Fu was tall and had long legs. It only took him 2 seconds to run from the 8 immortals table to the door. At the moment he touched the door lock switch with his finger, his sweat and hair suddenly stood up. He quickly withdrew his hand and saw frost rising on the surface of the door lock, which had already frozen. "What is this?" Seeing the frozen frost on the door lock, Yang Fu's eyes were almost wide open. TMD, when has there been such a thing as magic in this world? There was no time to be shocked. Yang Fu turned his head and looked behind him, only to see Luo Fugue raise his right hand and wave his sharp claws. Out of instinct, Yang Fu instinctively raised his hand to block. Then, he grabbed Luo Fugue's wrist. One person and one ghost were stunned, their eyes involuntarily shifted downwards and turned to Yang Fu's hand. Luo Fugue's transparent and void wrist was held in Yang Fu's hand, unable to continue pressing down, even if its fingertips were about to poke Yang Fu's scalp, it could not go down half an inch further. Glancing at their palms, each person and ghost looked up at each other. It was this glance that made Luo Fugue feel like a cat with its tail stepped on, immediately moving away from Yang Fu. Yang Fu moved his 5 fingers, and the confusion on his face gradually turned into a smile. A smile quickly formed on his face. "Oh, this ghost master, wasn't he quite arrogant just now? That's it." As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Fuan was like a starving tiger pouncing on food, his body shot out like a sharp arrow, rushing straight towards Luo Fugue. Luo Fugue didn't react in time and was grabbed by Yang Fu's head. Rolling evil energy rushed towards his face, and Luo Fugue let out a sharp scream, swinging with his claws growing in his hands. 10 nails were all inserted into Yang Fu's body, and even 2 nails were inserted into Yang Fu's neck on zhaozuiyuan.com. However, Yang Fu only twitched his facial muscles a few times, with several black lines appearing on his face. His arm muscles and blood vessels swelled and protruded, unleashing a powerful force that crushed Luo Fugue's head. As his head burst, Luo Fugue's body turned into a wisp of smoke and dissipated. Puff. Yang Fu sat down on the ground, panting heavily. "What the hell is that?" Yang Fu punched his leg angrily, and then his face froze. Detected that player Luo Fugue has been killed by non-players, player qualification transfer program has been launched. Program completed, Yang Fu passed the review and obtained player qualification, user initial name. Yang Fu, user level. LV1, current experience. 0 out of 100, current equipment. Sanqing bell, item. None, user detected as a novice player, activate novice guidance. From the sprouting of the first underwater life, to ancient giant beasts, to the first upright walking of ancient apes, and to the first time humans lit flames, life has gone through many experiences. There are countless life forms in the multiverse that are similar to humans. The vast majority of fantasy works created by humans, such as myths, epics, animations, comics, movies, games, etc., carry information projected from other worlds. Information is intertwined with countless civilizations and the world. We grow together, permeate each other, achieve each other, and compete with each other. You are the lucky one among humans and have obtained the qualification to embrace the extraordinary. Welcome to the battlefield of the heavens and all worlds. Welcome to the evolutionary game. Chapter 3. Tasks. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. The night in the countryside is quieter than in the city, and the sound of incense burners hitting the door spreads far in the village, waking up the elderly who already have poor sleep. The villagers walked out of their homes, discussing the sound they had just heard in shock and fear. Not everyone goes to bed early. Some villagers who didn't sleep just now know where the sound came from. West Village entrance, in the direction of Master Yang's house. Young Fu is cleaning up the incense ash at home, looking at the marks on the door and feeling a bit distressed. He doesn't know if he needs someone to repair them. At this moment, his phone rang. Hello. Fuzi, do you hear anything from your side? After connecting, a hoarse voice came from the other end of the phone. Young Fu glanced at the mark on the door, activated his brain, and soon realized that he didn't need to hide anything. Oh, Uncle Lee, it's like this. When I went home, I ran into a wicked ghost. It was so powerful that even the peach-wood sword left by Grandpa couldn't hurt it. In the end, I used the incense burner worshipped by Guangong to smash it until it went berserk. But when the ghost dispersed, the incense burner hit the door, and the sound came like this. Can you help me tell Uncle and Aunties that the incense ash has scattered all over the ground, and I still need to hurry up to clean it up? Yang Fu explained on the phone with a grin. So it's like this. Uncle Lee breathed a sigh of relief. Okay, let me tell them. You can continue to tidy up. Smiling and hanging up the phone, Yang Fu's face collapsed and he sighed. Use a broom to sweep the scattered incense ash into the garbage shovel, put it in a bag, and place it in the corner with the severely deformed incense burner. After finishing these, Yang Fu sat on the sofa, looked down at his hands, and then raised his hand to touch the wound on his body. His strength, stamina, and recovery ability have been much stronger than others since childhood. The wound that was only created a few minutes ago has now stopped bleeding and even begun to scab. Yang Fu believed himself to be a person with common sense, and he certainly knew it was abnormal, but what he had just experienced was even more unusual than his body. System. Calling out, the line of words projected onto the retina remained the same. Players are requested to perform a regular task to activate the system template, regular tasks. You have to tell me what regular tasks are first. Scratching his hair impatiently, Yang Fu took a deep breath from his mouth and got up to walk towards the bathroom. Anyway, when the boat reaches the bridgehead, it will naturally straighten out. Tomorrow, he still has to wake up early to sell vegetables. Taking off his blood-stained vest and about to enter the bathroom, Yang Fu's phone rang again. Glancing at it, I realized it was a WeChat message. Mr. Yang, may I ask if you are available tomorrow? The sender. Lu Shui. Who? Yang Fu flipped through the chat records before realizing that the sender of the message was the girl who ran over to ask for his contact information after finishing his work this afternoon. By the way, I remembered that she asked for her contact information because her friend encountered something strange. After some thought, Yang Fu replied with a free time. Great, I don't know when you are available tomorrow. Can you help me take a look at my friend's situation? She has been tormented for 4 days and now she dare not even close her eyes. Of course, we will pay for it, for messages were sent in a row, and it was evident that Lu Shui was really anxious. Yang Fu. Can you tell me specifically what the situation is? It's related to dreams. Lu Shui. Yes, my friend has been having the same dream these past few days. He dreamed that he would become a bride with a red cloth covering his head. He could hear the sound of walking, but every day, the footsteps would come closer. Mangfu. So she doesn't dare to close her eyes now, is it because the footsteps are already very close? Lu Shui. She said she can already see a pair of black cloth shoes standing in front of her. Seeing this, a voice suddenly rang out in Mangfu's mind. Task triggering conditions have been met, task type. Regular task, task name. Dream marriage, task objective. To prevent the groom from forcibly marrying a bride, task time limit. 25 hours, task reward 1. Launch the system template and open the player's personal panel, task reward 2. Experience points 50, task reward 3. Gain coins 50, accept/reject, pursed his lips, Mangfu typed and asked, is tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock okay? Lu Shui. Sure. Of course. After finalizing the time and location, Mangfu put down his phone and walked into the bathroom to take a shower. There is one more thing to do tomorrow. At 5 o'clock in the morning, when it was still pitch black, Mangfu's alarm clock rang and he yawned as he got up from the bed. After washing up, I casually had breakfast and then carried a hoe and a basket on my back out. Although he is a farmer, Mangfu does not grow food in his fields. He has another job and doesn't spend as much time in the fields. Now his field mainly grows cabbage and lettuce, which consume a lot and are relatively easy to sell, but their prices are a bit low. When Mangfu carried a hoe into the field, he found that there were already people working in the surrounding fields. After greeting them, Mangfu buried his head and dug out the ripe cabbage and lettuce, putting them in a basket. After digging, the sky finally brightened. Mangfu carried a basket full of vegetables on his back and went home with the others. On the way, he also helped others share some of the weight. When he returned home, he put the basket on the tricycle trailer and pushed the car out of the door. Mangfu pushed his tricycle along the village road, and the farmers who had just returned with him put the labeled baskets on a mop. As they walked to the other side of the village, the mop was filled with baskets, and even because there were too many baskets, they had to be fixed with ropes. Let's go. After greeting his uncle, aunt, and grandparents who were watching him grow up, Mangfu vigorously pedaled the pedal and the heavy tricycle drove forward. His destination is several vegetable markets and supermarkets near the village. If the procurement personnel of the markets and supermarkets come directly to purchase, the bid is too low. Fortunately, he has the strength and eloquence to help fellow villagers sell vegetables. At the end of the day, in addition to the vegetables he grows, he can also earn a few tens of yuan in hard-earned money. Starting from the village at 6.30, Mangfu was busy until after 11 o'clock when he finally sold all the vegetables. Returning to the village, he handed over the money from each family and hurriedly had lunch. Mangfu then set off from home with an old bound book. Lu Shui and her friends are both students of Huashe University, and their agreed location is naturally near Huashe University. After taking the subway for over an hour and transferring several times, Mangfu finally arrived at the cafe called Cavano before 2 o'clock. Looking up at the sign, Mangfu pushed the door in. Ding! The welcome doorbell rang, and the waiter in the store smiled and faced the door. Welcome light. Coming. A burly figure, a white vest propped up by muscles, a cropped head and sunglasses perched on the bridge of the nose, and an antique canvas bag slung across the shoulder. No matter how it looks, it doesn't look like a coffee shop pairing. Thank you. Contrary to his appearance, the burly visitor's voice sounded very gentle. I'm here to find someone. May I ask, where is table 15? Despite this, when he laughed, his towering white fangs remained terrifying. The waiter was sweating profusely and forced to smile. Just as he was about to answer, he realized he couldn't even remember where table 15 was. At this moment, bursts of footsteps came. Mr. Yang. A soft voice rescued the waiter from sweating profusely. Lu Xue walked over and asked the Shuyuan website www.zhaoshuyuan.com to take Yang Fu away. This way, she said, watching the tall figure being pulled away, the waiter couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Yang Fu was taken to the corner of the coffee shop by Lu Xue. After sitting down, he looked at another girl in the booth. This girl has delicate makeup on her face, but it cannot conceal her haggard and lethargic state. Seeing Lu Xue bringing Yang Fu over, the girl's mouth slightly opened, appearing somewhat surprised. "Xue, is this the master you're talking about?" Previously, she was still wondering why she wanted to schedule a meeting place at a coffee shop, but now she understands. Most people's impression of feng shui masters is that they are middle-aged and elderly people with a beautiful appearance and a goatee. Although the master in front of them also wears sunglasses, and even retro small round-frame sunglasses, no matter how they look, they are all too young. And it's also too robust. Before Lu Xue could explain, Yang Fu took the lead and said, "I'm not a master. First of all, I want to make it clear that I'm not in this industry. I just have a special ability to communicate with ghosts and monsters, that's all." Upon hearing this, another girl stared blankly at Lu Xue, as if asking with her eyes. Since that's the case, why call her over? Providing hope but also disappointing. Immediately after, Yang Fu opened the canvas bag and took out an old thread-bound book, carefully placing it on the table. "But my grandfather is in this industry, and if it's not a big problem, you can find the answer from this book." Speaking, Yang Fu looked up at another girl, and the pupils hidden behind the sunglasses immediately stood up. "Miss, can you elaborate on what happened to you?" He grinned his fangs and said happily. Chapter 4. Nightmares. You are listening at novelfull.audio. My surname is Dao. The sword of the sword is shining brightly. Dao Yingying paused for a moment, and Yu said, "Since 4 days ago, I have been haunted by a nightmare. Every time I fall asleep, I am dragged into the same nightmare. In my dream, I was a bride wearing a wedding dress, with a red veil over her head, sitting by the bed, unable to move. Every time I dream, I can hear footsteps coming from afar, whether it's at night or taking a nap, I can dream of this scene. Since yesterday, I haven't dared to take a nap. I didn't sleep either. I stayed up all night with coffee and energy drinks because I had already dreamed of a pair of black cloth shoes standing in front of me the night before yesterday. If I were to dream again, that thing might lift the lid, I." At this point, Dao Yingying's breathing couldn't help but become rapid, and the whole person became panicked. Lu Xue quickly patted her back and comforted her in a low voice. "Damn it." Yang Fu tapped the table with his right index finger twice, and the sound seemed to have magical power. Dao Yingying woke up from her fearful imagination, and her breathing gradually stabilized. "Let's take a sip of coffee first," Yang Fu smiled. Dao Yingying remained silent for a moment, then took a sip of coffee according to Yang Fu's words. The scorching heat of the coffee pricked the tip of her tongue, making her brain much clearer at once. Upon seeing this, Yang Fu pondered and organized his words, saying, "Miss Dao, what happened to you is a classic nightmare. Can you help me get rid of it?" Dao Yingying asked urgently before Yang Fu finished speaking. Yang Fu's eyes, hidden behind his sunglasses, blinked and shook his head with a smirk. "Miss Dao, you may have misunderstood. Even my grandfather doesn't have the ability to directly help you relieve nightmares, because nightmares are often not caused by ghosts, they are born from your dreams." As he spoke, Yang Fu opened the ancient thread-bound book, flipped over one page, and then turned the direction of the book to present that page to the two people across from him. Lu Xue and Dao Yingying leaned their heads together and carefully examined the text on it. What gave them a headache was that the book was full of traditional Chinese characters and there were no obvious broken sentences. The nightmare of the husband is eerie and has encountered nothing more than death in his life, following his dream. After a few glances, they felt dizzy and overwhelmed, and immediately pushed the book back. Young Fu was eating the dessert on the table, and when he saw this, he closed and put away the bound book. Generally speaking, there are 3 ways to deal with the impact of nightmares. The first one is to wear an illuminated talisman. As long as you don't dream of a nightmare, it will die on its own after a while. However, I don't have a talisman in my hand and won't do it. Moreover, this talisman is quite expensive. Yang Fu shrugged his shoulder. This method is just for your reference. Upon hearing talismans and quite expensive, Lu Xue and her daughter were a bit nervous, almost thinking that Yang Fu was trying to cheat money. Fortunately, Yang Fu later said it was just for reference. After pausing for a moment, Yang Fu continued, "What about the second method? After all, the nightmare you have is actually your dream. As long as you can muster up the courage and embrace the idea that all ghosts, snakes, and gods are paper tigers, it is not a problem for you to tear apart the nightmare in your dream. However, this method is not suitable for you. You have been tormented by the nightmare for a few days, and your whole body is in a state of anxiety and confusion. To win the nightmare, it cannot be said to be wishful thinking, but at least it is a fantasy. The most suitable method for you is still the last one." "What method is it?" Dao Yingying urgently asked. Just now, Yang Fu said 2 methods, which have already made her doubt about 10 to 70%. Now she believes that Yang Fu can really help her solve this problem. Looking at her urgent expression, Yang Fu felt a little helpless and said, "Aren't you afraid that I'm a scammer?" Dao Yingying was taken aback for a moment, then smiled and said, "I really didn't think of this before. After you reminded me, I realized it. But you've said that. Can you still be a scammer?" Yang Fu scratched his head, remained silent for a moment, and turned the topic back. "The third method, Miss Dao, you need to carefully recall whether you had bought anything special, received any gifts, or visited any entertainment venues from 4 to 10 days ago. There is no such thing as magic in this world. To make a person have a nightmare, you need to have an aversion object. You have had contact with that aversion object before, and based on the rate of deterioration of the nightmare, the aversion object should be by your side, at least for the past few days. Think carefully, Miss Dao, is there anything suspicious?" Dao Yingying and Lu Xue started reminiscing while drinking coffee. After a while, Dao Yingying didn't remember. Lu Xue thought of something and lightly patted her arm. "Did a handsome guy give you a pendant when you came back from a bar before?" "It was the one I said I wanted to throw away, but you had to put it away." Upon hearing this, Dao Yingying's face showed a dull expression. Upon being reminded by Lu Xue, she also remembered the pendant, and her face immediately became ugly. "It should be impossible." That's what she said, but in fact, she's just being stubborn. In fact, she's starting to suspect that this is how her nightmare came about. Lu Xue turned her head to look at Yang Fu and said, "Master Yang, what should we do next?" "If you can find the Yenqing object, that's easy," Yang Fu grinned, his teeth so white that both Dao Yingying and Lu Xue looked a bit chilly. "Give me the Yenqing object, and when Miss Dao is about to sleep, give me a call. I will dispose of the Yenqing object according to your dream time, and the nightmare will naturally disappear." "Alright, I won't say much. Miss Dao, you've been staying up all night and should be tired too. Go and give me the Yenqing object and handle it earlier. Miss Dao, you can also rest well earlier." So, Lu Xue and Dao Yingying hurriedly settled the bill and took Yang Fu to the west gate of Huashe, asking him to wait here for a while. They went back to the dormitory to pick up things. Perhaps they were in a hurry to resolve this matter, but not long after, they ran out panting again and handed the things to Yang Fu. "That is a small wooden cart." Just as he got started, Yang Fu frowned. "This thing. It's a bit old." Grandpa Yang Fu was a famous feng shui master from 10 miles and 8 villages before his death. He grew up with his grandfather and has also come into contact with many things with a certain age. He knows that the feel of old and new things is very different. Upon hearing Yang Fu's murmur, Lu Shui nodded and said, "The person who gave Yingying things claimed to have an antique shop at home. He said this pendant was from the Qing dynasty, but it was not worth much money." Pendant. Yang Fu sneered and threw away the wooden plaque in his hand. "This thing can barely be called a pendant. It's a waste plaque. Look, it's carved with magpies, mostly for praying for good luck and a good marriage. If nothing unexpected happens, it should be a waste plaque carried by a daughter of a wealthy family. Usually, this kind of thing would follow its owner to the ground. Guess why it appears here?" Lu Shui and Dao Yingying were immediately frightened and their faces turned pale, especially Dao Yingying. The thought of hanging a burial item by the bedside for 4 days made her body unable to resist swaying. As they looked around, Yang Fu stopped scaring them and smiled, "All right, I've also received the disgusting victory. I should go back and prepare for it. Miss Dao and Miss Lu, I dare to advise you not to go to places like bars and nightclubs that hide dirt and grime. Even if they are clean bars, they are definitely not as clean as they seem on the surface. You may think you're going to play, but you don't know whose hunting grounds those places are. As soon as you walk in, they automatically become prey. That's all for now. If Miss Dao wants to sleep, make sure. Yes, make sure to give me a call so that I can handle this matter." At this point, Yang Fu waved goodbye to the two of them and turned around to leave. He will go back as he came. On the subway, Yang Fu was playing with wooden cards. Until now, he has not received a prompt for completing the task, indicating that the judgment for completing the task is not as broad. At this moment, neither Lu Shui nor Dao Yingying knew that he had actually deceived them. He had said before that there were no spells in this world, but they didn't listen. If they listen, they won't believe he can solve the nightmare problem on Dao Yingying. There is actually only one way to solve a nightmare, and that is, those who encounter a nightmare believe they can solve it. Whether it is a light amulet or using a detestable object to solve a nightmare, it is all to make those who are haunted by the nightmare believe that the nightmare will be solved. Nightmares are not something particularly mysterious, they are just a nightmare with a continuous plot under the influence of Yin Sha Qi. In this case, all rituals held to eliminate nightmares are aimed at enhancing the confidence of those who are haunted by nightmares. Of course, now that the evolutionary games have all come out, Luo Fugue has also demonstrated a power similar to magic. Yang Fu is not really sure if the nightmare on Dao Yingying's body was caused by magic. He can only hope that the task rewards in the evolutionary game are linked to the difficulty of the task, otherwise he has no choice. Chapter 5. Panel. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yang Fu respectfully placed the new incense burner in front of the statue of Guangong, and then buried the wooden plaque in the incense ash. I took a photo with my phone and sent it to Lu Shui. Lu Shui. Is that enough? Yang Fu did not answer and took another photo of the couplet behind the statue of Guangong and the bronze statue for Lu Shui. He then sent a message to add explanation. Miss Dao, are you ready to sleep? If you're going to sleep, I'll light the incense. After a while, Lu Shui replied with a message. I showed her the photo you sent. Next, I asked another question. After coming back, I carefully thought about it and found that the 3 methods you mentioned can actually be assimilated into the second method, and you also said that there is no such thing as magic in this world. You took the disgusting object back and even took a photo to send it over. Are you all trying to give Yingying a psychological suggestion? Yang Fu didn't answer immediately and instead asked, You didn't tell Miss Dao about this speculation, did you? Lu Shui. No, Yingying doesn't know about this yet. Yang Fu. That's it, I can tell you the truth. This is indeed a psychological suggestion. As I said, there is no such thing as magic in this world, so I cannot solve the problem with Miss Dao. To solve this problem, I can only rely on her own. Only when she believes that this matter can be solved can the nightmare be eliminated. All the rituals I do are to win her trust and make her believe that this matter will be solved. After reading this message, Lu Shui put down her phone and turned to look at Dao Yingying across from the bed. Although Yang Fu's behavior was almost equivalent to deception, Dao Yingying's situation has improved compared to the previous 4 days. In the past few days, Dao Yingying almost had a painful expression on her face after falling asleep, but now she is sleeping soundly. It seems that the problem with Yingying has really been solved. In a few days, it will be the National Day holiday, and Yingying has also been a bit tired these days. Let's go on a trip together, just take it as a relief from the shock of these days. Prevent the groom from forcibly marrying the bride. 1/1. The regular task, dream marriage, has been completed, and the task reward settlement is in progress. Task Reward 1. Launch the system template and open the player's personal panel. Task Reward 2. Experience points 50, Task Reward 3. Game coins 50, overall player performance. B. Increased game coins and experience points obtained to 130%, tip. After the system template is launched, players will receive a user ID and can use existing system functions, tip. After the personal panel is opened, players can query personal attribute information, equipment information, and set player nicknames. Player nicknames cannot be set as user numbers, tip. The existing functions of the system include player assistance, game mall, and equipment identification. After Yang Fu took out the wooden plaque from the incense ash and crushed it, the above information came to his mind. Solved it. Yang Fu looked at the fragments in his hand in disbelief, wondering whether it was his own method that solved the nightmare, or whether it was because he crushed the disgusted victory object. If it's the latter, then the problem is bigger. Sitting on the sofa, Yang Fu attempted to silently recite the system, and this time, the system panel truly appeared before his eyes. The system panel is launched, and players can confirm various game information based on guidance or by exploring on their own. After this line of words flashed by, a system panel resembling a holographic projection appeared in front of Yang Fu. On the left side of the panel is a list of options, including user information, personal attributes, player equipment, skill list, task log, game mall, player backpack, and player help. I didn't see where the equipment identification is, it may be merged with a certain option. Yang Fu thought of turning on player assistance, and the image projected in front of him changed accordingly. There were too many words in player help, and Yang Fu felt dizzy and confused. He scratched his head in annoyance and immediately spoke up to inquire. What's going on with this game? What's happening in this world? The purpose of the evolution game is to select the strong ones on Earth and give them the opportunity to drive the evolution of all humanity. In order to cooperate with the evolution game, the current Earth has been connected to the infinite world, and the extraordinary phenomena that existed before have been strengthened. Although they did not appear before, they are expected to develop in the future. Yang Fu furrowed his brows, leaned forward slightly, his elbows against his knees, crossed his fingers, and stared at the projection in front of him. After a moment, based on his rich experience in novels, he slowly asked, has there ever been an evolutionary game held in the history of Earth? There has never been an evolution game held in the history of Earth, and this evolution game is the first game on Earth. Yang Fu thought for a moment and put it another way. Has Earth ever been used as a field for evolutionary games? Earth has been used as a competition field in 2 evolutionary games. When are they respectively? The first one was 540 million years ago, and the second one was 65 million years ago according to the information provided by the system. Yang Fu checked with his mobile phone and found that the first time was during the Cambrian period of the Great Explosion of Life, while the second time was during the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction event. Is this a coincidence? Or are these 2 events triggered by the game of evolution? And how could the game of evolution continue for billions of years? How do evolutionary games select players? The system randomly selects the original species of the world as players. Non-players can obtain qualifications by killing players. To ensure the normal operation of the game, non-players can obtain qualifications by killing players. After obtaining qualifications by killing players, the system will issue system template activation tasks based on the user's killing method. Player qualifications are not transferable and will not be inherited through blood. Subsequently, Mangfu asked a few more questions and finally gained a rough understanding of how the evolutionary game operates. The start time of this evolution game on Earth was 5 months ago, and the specific time was not disclosed by the system. However, this also indicates that this evolution game has been playing for at least 5 months. As for the size of the players, the system's answer is no comment. In terms of tasks, the types of tasks in evolutionary games can be divided into 2 types. First, regular tasks, which appear randomly triggered. As long as the player comes into contact with key information of some special events, they can trigger regular tasks. Generally speaking, completing regular tasks is rewarded, failure is not punished, and refusal is also okay. The second type of periodic task has a random task scenario, which may be on Earth or in other worlds. Every half-month, the system will release a periodic task, which players cannot refuse and are forced to accept. After completion, the reward is generous, and if failed, the punishment is also severe, depriving them of attribute values, skills, props, and even wiping them out. After the task is completed, the system will rate the player based on their performance in the task and their level of exploration of task information. Those who barely complete the task and have not discovered any hidden information will be rated as E. For each level of improvement in the score, the reward and achievement after completing the task will increase by 10%. If the task score ends at S level, they will receive 150% experience points and game coin rewards for the task. In addition, they can also receive an additional treasure chest, whose level increases with the player's level. Mangfu shifted his focus from player assistance to personal attributes. He has been physically stronger than his peers since childhood, and by the age of 13, he was already able to compare and even surpass adult males. I just don't know to what extent his current physical fitness is so strong. Evolutionary Game divides player attributes into 6 categories: strength, agility, physique, intelligence, perception, and charm. Strength represents muscle strength and fascia toughness, agility represents nerve reaction speed and body coordination, and physique represents overall resistance, recovery, physical strength, and immunity. Intelligence represents computing and thinking abilities, while perception represents observation, sensory strength, and intuition. Charm is quite unique and can be summarized as the strength of an individual's influence on external things through willpower. Zhaoshuyuan.com. On the attribute panel, Mangfu's values are as follows. Power. 8. Your power has reached the pinnacle of humanity, agility. 8. 1 feather cannot be added, flies and insects cannot fall, constitution. 8. Stubborn as a rock, intelligence. 5. At the level of a normal person, perception. 8. Top predator, charm. 4. Too fierce, based on an average adult male, the highest attribute of an average person is only 5. The strength of a well-trained wrestler can reach 6, and a strength of 7 is already the standard for professional athletes. Mangfu is not surprised by his own 8 points of strength, as he can easily lift something weighing 100 pounds. However, out of the 6 attributes, 4 of them actually reached 8, which he did not expect. Is this hanging up too big? That's what Mangfu said, but there was a smile on the corner of his mouth. His gaze silently shifted towards the skill list, and when he saw the lonely skill on the list, his upturned lips sank. Skill name. Evil Tiger suppresses evil, type. Universal, usage. Passive, level. Rare, special effect 1. Gluttony. Tiger Sha will devour spiritual powers such as Sha Qi and Yin Qi, gradually transforming the host's body while strengthening. Special effect 2. Entangled. Tiger Sha will gradually immerse itself in flesh and blood, allowing the host to harm the spiritual body with their physical body. Special Effect 3. Transforming the tiger. The host's body will gradually lean towards the Tiger Sha, and ultimately completely transform the tiger, 60.58%. Note 1. Using Sha to suppress Sha, is there a strange rate of tiger cannibalism? Note 2. It's no different. Chapter 6. Security. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Young Fu, who lost his parents at a young age, was raised by his grandfather alone. His grandfather is a feng shui master, not only famous in 10 miles and 8 villages, but even wealthy people have sent people to come to Xiangdao to invite him out of the mountains. However, that was all before Yang Fu was born. After Yang Fu was born, his grandfather believed that what he had done before was harmful to Tianhe, which led to his grandson's natural yin and yang eyes. Later, when Yang Fu was 3 years old, his parents passed away for some reason, further stimulating his grandfather. Originally, his family had some assets, but all of them were donated by his grandfather. Except for that house and some fields, everything else was donated to the underdeveloped western regions. Despite this, Yang Fu was still entangled in the yin sha qi due to his innate yin-yang eye problem, and almost passed away. Helpless, his grandfather could only rely on connections to find his former acquaintance and ask him to find a way to help Yang Fu suppress the yin sha qi. And this method is to drink poison to quench thirst, known as evil tiger suppresses evil. Look at that brother, he has a tattoo on his body. You can tell at a glance that he didn't study well before, but now he has to go out and sell vegetables. What a shame. Yang Fu was intelligent in his ears and eyes. Even on the bustling street, when someone was whispering 10 meters away, he could still hear the sound. Moreover, the mother and son passing behind him had no intention of concealing their voices. Awakening from his memories, Yang Fu instinctively touched his back and smiled helplessly. That mother is half right, he didn't really study hard before. Eyes hidden behind sunglasses were sweeping back and forth on the street, while Yang Fu sat on a folding stool with his tricycle parked in front of him. The tricycle mop was filled with fresh vegetables he had picked this morning. The vegetable consumption in markets and supermarkets is very high, and it is not possible to supply all vegetables in one village alone. Moreover, markets and supermarkets do not allow this. Apart from their village, there are other villages and farms supplying fruits and vegetables to markets and supermarkets. Sometimes, the fruits and vegetables in their village cannot be sold due to various reasons. In such cases, Yang Fu usually takes the remaining fruits and vegetables to the city to set up stalls for sale. The price in the morning is only a few cents lower than the market price. In the afternoon, it is sold at cost price, and in the evening, even if it is a loss, the remaining fruits and vegetables must be sold. In the past, this was just a desperate move to make a living, but now it is a blessing in disguise. There are many urban villages in Yangcheng, with a complex population composition that accommodates many migrant workers from other cities. These areas growing in the cracks of high-rise buildings are gathering places for migrant workers, combined with those locals who have not benefited from urban development, creating a mixed scene of good and bad on the street. Due to the high population density, there are many lonely souls and wild ghosts here. Yang Fu has a natural yin and yang eye, and has been able to see ghosts and monsters since childhood, and can directly communicate with spiritual bodies. This also represents that he has an additional way to collect information than other players. Brother. Coincidentally encountering a ghost passing by, Yang Fu called out softly twice. Ghosts are not afraid of the sun, but the sunlight suppresses their yin and evil energy, accelerating their extinction. Generally, ghosts do not walk under the sunlight. Upon hearing the call, the middle-aged man with a semi-transparent body dumbfounded and turned to look at Yang Fu, but did not respond. Seeing its appearance, Yang Fu shook his head slightly. Ghosts rely on the energy of yin and evil, and the day when the energy of yin and evil is completely dissipated is the day when ghosts are completely dissipated. Before that, their intelligence will gradually decrease with the dissipation of the energy of yin and evil. However, on the day when the yin and evil energy are completely consumed, their dissipated consciousness has a chance to float into the bodies of other living creatures and interact with them, which is also the origin of the head 7. The vast majority of ghosts can only support 7 days. Afterwards, several ghosts passed by Mangfu, but only one security ghost had clear consciousness, while the other ghosts were already in chaos. There was no special intelligence on the remaining conscious ghost, which prevented Mangfu from triggering the mission. Instead, he added a note in his phone memo to help him bring a few words to his family. Mangfu's strange behavior was noticed by a person who stood in the distance, struggling for a moment before quickly walking over. With a burst of eager footsteps, a hoarse female voice reached Mangfu's ears. That. Mangfu turned his head and saw a woman with a haggard expression, holding a stack of promotional materials in her hand. Have you ever seen this child? The woman handed over the missing person notice, her eyes filled with hope. Mangfu took the order and looked at the colorful photos on it. He carefully identified the boy in the photo and found that there was no impression. He then shook his head and said, "Sorry, I haven't seen him before." At this moment, the ghost of the security guard who was lingering beside Mangfu suddenly shouted, "I have seen it. I have seen this child." With a tremble in his ears, Mangfu turned his head over. The security ghost excitedly pointed at the woman holding onto the missing person notice, her face full of nervousness, and said, "You ask her if that child went missing near here." Mangfu pushed his sunglasses and asked the woman a question. Upon hearing this, the woman immediately became excited and nodded repeatedly, "Right, right. My child went missing near here. If it weren't for me not keeping an eye on him that day." As she spoke, tears welled up in her eyes, and the woman covered her mouth and began to sob. "That's right." The security ghost slammed its thigh with its right hand and shouted, "I saw it a few days ago. It was evening and a van was parked across the street. The child ran across to play and ended up being caught in that car. I still remember its license plate number." Mangfu raised his eyebrows and took out his phone to prepare a record. "What is the license plate number?" The woman paused for a moment, wondering why Mangfu suddenly asked for the license plate number, only to see his fingers clicking on the soft keyboard and writing out a license plate number. Seeing this, the woman's body trembled and confirmed her guess in her heart. "Here, it's a van with this license plate number that kidnapped your child." Mangfu showed the woman his phone. The woman quickly took out her phone, took a photo, thanked her hastily, and then quickly left, making phone calls while walking. "Hello. Husband, I found a clue." Watching the woman walk away, Mangfu looked at the security ghost standing beside him, laughing uncontrollably happily, and asked, "Are you very happy?" "Of course." The security ghost crossed his waist with both hands, and the corners of his mouth were almost on the tip of his ear. But after a while, its expression dimmed and it sighed, "I really want to go home and take a look. Its home is over 1,000 kilometers away from Yangcheng, and it's impossible to go back. Zhaoshuyuan.com. It just helped a mother find her child, but her mother can never wait for it to come home. Speaking of which, why did you pass away?" Mangfu lowered his head and casually asked while scrolling through the short video. The security ghost touched its neck and sighed, "You can tell from my clothes that I work as a security guard, but it's not from around here. I only arrived here 2 days ago. I originally wanted to go home and take a look, but after walking for a day and a night, I could only walk here, so I gave up. I think I might have died suddenly. After all, I was on the night shift that day. The likelihood of sudden death from staying up late is not low, but the most common professions are programmers and healthcare workers, while sudden death from security personnel is quite rare." Mangfu seemed to suddenly think of something, over there in Jinyuan community. A few days ago, when he was passing by to transport goods, he heard about the sudden death of a security guard in the middle of the night. "No, I'm from Kaitai community," the security ghost asked in confusion. "Did someone suddenly die in Jinyuan community?" Yang Fuduan was constantly vigilant. Before becoming a player, he would think that this kind of thing was a coincidence, but after becoming a player and knowing that the game of evolution would change the Earth's environment, he realized that the world had changed, and many sneaky creatures were lurking in the darkness. Just as Yang Fu was about to investigate along this clue, a system prompt suddenly sounded in his ear. Task triggering conditions have been met, task type. Regular task, task name. Licking the soul, task objective. Investigate the truth about the deaths of multiple security guards in Lixiang district in the past 5 days, task reward. Normal quality random item *1, accept/reject. Chapter 7. 7 stars. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yang Fu checked the map and found that Kaitai community and Jinyuan community cannot be said to be far apart, at least they are completely different. One is located in the eastern part of Lixiang district, and the other is located in the southern part. Lixiang district covers an area of approximately 1,600 square kilometers, with Kaitai community and Jinyuan community located one in the east and the other in the south. The straight line distance may be more than 10 kilometers, and it doesn't seem to be related at all. Later, he searched for local news again, and although he saw several news about the sudden death of security guards, those news did not provide him with much effective information. Yang Fu took notes of the locations where the security guards passed away, including Kaitai community, Jinyuan community, Guiminghuafu, Tiantong building. The security ghost stood on the side curiously watching, and after a while, it reacted. "So many security guards have died," it murmured softly. If the time is extended, the sudden death of security guards staying up late may not be considered a big news, but these deaths occurred within 5 days and were still in the same urban area, which makes people doubt whether there is any conspiracy behind it. The security ghost is one of these deceased individuals, and when it realizes that its death was not an accident, but rather someone manipulating it from behind, it becomes angry. "Damn it! Who is it?" The security ghost had a grim expression and clenched its fists. Yang Fu didn't even lift his head and said, "I think this technique is a bit like the people on our side, but I don't know what he wants to do." Upon hearing Yang Fu's words, the ghost of the security guard showed grief and anger and shouted, "Can you help us seek revenge?" Upon hearing this, Yang Fu glanced at the ghost of the security guard and sighed, "I don't know if I can find someone yet. Next, I need to investigate the location of the incident." As the saying goes, Yang Fu did not take immediate action. He honestly sold all the vegetables and had dinner at a small restaurant on the street before setting off with the eager ghost of the security guard. The nearest location of the incident was Guiminghuafu. Yang Fu rode a tricycle for over half an hour and arrived at the entrance of the community. The residents of Guiminghuafu are mostly working class. From the outside, although this newly completed community was tall and magnificent a few years ago, the monotonous coloring and cold decoration made this community appear dull, like a product of copying and pasting from other communities. "I won't go in," Yang Fu said to the security ghost. "Can you help me go in and see if there are ghosts like you inside?" It is difficult for him to enter an unfamiliar community due to his appearance. In the past, when walking on the street, although I didn't get my ID checked by the police, I was always wary and distant from others. Shopping is still like this, let alone entering an unfamiliar neighborhood. The security ghost nodded and turned to float in. Yang Fu took out his power bank to charge his phone, while reading a novel and waiting for the security ghost to come out. After about 15 minutes, the ghost of the security guard came out, but its face was full of confusion. "No. There is not a ghost in Guiming Mansion, even cleaner than the streets." Yang Fu was puzzled and grabbed the back of his head without saying anything. He took the ghost of the security guard to the next location where the incident occurred. The next location is Tiantong Building. Following the previous practice, Yang Fu waited outside and had the security ghost enter to investigate the situation. After a while, the ghost of the security guard returned alone to Yang Fu's side and gave the same answer. Yang Fu took out the clues he had just recorded and drew a circle for Kaitai community to distinguish it from other locations. After a moment of contemplation, Yang Fu said to the security ghost, "From the current situation, either your situation is different from others, or you have left your place of death and escaped a disaster. Which do you think is possible?" When asked about this, the security ghost was somewhat puzzled and scratched its head in distress. It looked around for a while, but couldn't come up with an answer. While the security ghost was pondering, Yang Fu silently summoned the system panel and opened the task log. The name of the ongoing task is written in it, Lick Soul. Since that's the case, does it mean that the ghosts of those security guards have been eaten? And why is it a security guard? What is the connection between the security guards in Jinyuan community, Guiming Huafu, Tiantong Building, and other places? At this moment, Yang Fu suddenly woke up and took out his phone to search for the property management companies and security personnel in these places. But after spending about 10 minutes, he realized that the property management companies in these places were not the same. Some of the security guards were hired by the community themselves, while others were hired by different security companies. Further down, even the developers are not the same, let alone the legal representative and shareholders of the company. Is this hidden so deep? The ghost of the security guard standing next to Yang Fu couldn't help but sigh. In its view, Yang Fu has dug up so much information, but still hasn't found any connection between these dead security guards, which is quite incredible. Yang Fu pinched his phone, his lips pursed tightly, and his index finger unconsciously clicked on the phone's border. After hesitating for half a minute, he finally made up his mind, clicked on his address book, and dialed a phone number. Not long after, the phone was dialed, and a hearty laugh came from the receiver. "Fuzi, what's up with calling so late?" Spitting out a mouthful of turbid air, Yang Fu whispered, "Uncle Mu, I would like to ask for your help." "Oh. It's really rare. How could Fu Zai ask me for help?" The old man on the other end of the phone laughed heartily. Okay. If you have anything to do, just let me know. If Uncle can help, he will definitely help. I want to find out who the people behind Jinyuan community, Guiming Huafu, Tiantong Building, and Kaitai community are, Yang Fu said, naming several locations. The old man couldn't help but wonder, why do you suddenly want to check these? Yang Fu glanced at the ghost of the security guard beside him and said half-truthfully, "Today when I was selling vegetables on the street, I encountered a ghost. It was a security guard from Kaitai community who died suddenly a few days ago. A few days ago, when I passed by Jinyuan community, I heard that a security guard had also died suddenly. Because the time was too close, I checked the latest news and found that there have been several news reports of security guards dying suddenly in Lixiang district in the past few days, and they are not the same person. I suspect that the people on our side are doing something. To figure out what's happening, if it's done by the people on our side, it must be dealt with." Upon hearing this, the old man's voice became serious. "Fuzi, are you sure?" Yang Fu remained noncommittal and simply said, "Uncle, you can find out by finding someone to investigate." "Okay, I'll have someone investigate now," the old man said, recalling something. "By the way, October 14th, remember that day?" "I remember, definitely remember." Yang Fu nodded and said, "That's it, I'll have someone check it out. When I find the exact information, I'll have someone call you." The old man chuckled and said, "Hang up, go to bed early." "I know, uncle, you should rest early," Yang Fu said with a slight curl in his mouth. Subsequently, Yang Fu put down his phone and waited for the other end of the call. The security ghost approached curiously and said, "Is it related?" Yang Fu nodded without explaining. "Put away your phone, step onto the tricycle, and take advantage of the bright moonlight to drive towards Kaitai community. "Where is this going?" the security ghost couldn't help but ask. Yang Fu replied, "Kaitai community. It's only 8 o'clock now, with cars coming and going on the street." Yang Fu is riding a tricycle in the traffic, and the constant music and neon lights announce the beginning of nightlife. However, all of this has nothing to do with Yang Fu. As a farmer, he doesn't have that much time to enjoy nightlife. As night fell, more ghosts appeared on the street. Ghosts are not like living people, they have so many ways of entertainment, and their only pleasure is peeping into the lives and chatting of living people. Before coming, Yang Fu had warned the security guard ghost to avoid talking to him when on the road, as he would be in big trouble if other ghosts were attracted to him. Halfway down the road, a phone call came to Yang Fu's phone. "Mr. Yang, we have found the 7 places you mentioned." Yang Fu interrupted the conversation across from him. 7 places. He only found 5 before. Yes, in the past few days, there have been 7 places where security guards suddenly died, including Jinyuan Community, Gui Minghuafu, Tiantong Building, Lixiang Foreign Language Experimental Middle School, Kaitai Community, Jiamanfu Shopping Mall, and the first phase of Taoyuan Mingjiu under construction. The security guards in these places belong to different property and security companies, but a month ago, someone suddenly invested in these companies. After that, those companies began to recruit new security guards. Among the 7 security guards who died suddenly, 4 were applied for during that round of recruitment. Yang Fu parked his tricycle on the roadside and took notes using a street lamp. Who is that person? Chen Haixing is the big boss of Tianfang Real Estate, with a net worth of billions. After confirming the identity information of the target, Yang Fu hung up the phone. Open the map software, mark those addresses on the map, and then connect them in your mind to form a graph. Yang Fu will understand the reason for this. According to the Yunji Qijin Endowment and Mandate Department, a person begins to receive the body, coming from the void, turning yellow and white, constructing qi and condensing essence, carrying heaven and earth smoothly, and integrating yin and yang. At the cellular stage, the 3 elements are nurtured, the 9 qi are distributed and transformed, the year star is the liver, the tai bai is the lung, the zhen star is the spleen, the ying is the heart, the chen star is the kidney, and the Big Dipper opens its 7 orifices. The 7 punctuation points presented on the map today are undoubtedly the Big Dipper 7 stars. Chapter 8. Truth. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Grandpa Yang Fu did not want him to enter the field of feng shui. He believed that he had done too many wrong things, which led to the death of his son and daughter. Law. His grandson was born with yin and yang eyes, and it was karma. He believed that if Yang Fu entered the field of feng shui, he would inevitably encounter the same situation as himself. But there's no way, because Yang Fu has a tattoo on his back, he can't go to a good school. He's not smart enough, even if he studies hard, his grades won't improve. In elementary school, it was easy to say, but there was a black mark on his back that covered most of his back, which could be falsely called a birthmark. However, in middle school, Yang Fu's body grew and that large black spot began to differentiate, giving rise to the embryonic form of a tiger head. In high school, not to mention, although the tiger head tattoo on his back was not as vivid as it is now, it was almost formed. Helpless, Grandpa could only expose Yang Fu to the art of feng shui and physiognomy. Unfortunately, Yang Fu started too late and had already passed the most suitable age for learning. Even now, he still has a partial understanding of feng shui and physiognomy. However, with only a little knowledge, one still knows some things. The handle points to the west, just in time for the heavens. What is this to open the 7 orifices for? Yang Fu murmured to himself. Although it is only the end of September now, it is also autumn, and the handle of the Big Dipper in the sky has pointed to the west. If Jinyuan Community is the Tianshu, then the first phase of the Taoyuan Mingjiu construction site under construction is the Qiaoguang. It seems that the death of the security ghost was not an accident, but a deliberate act by someone. Understood, everything is clear now. Yang Fu searched the old almanac for today and tomorrow, confirmed his guess, then put away his phone and turned to the security ghost, saying, "Guide me to the Kaitai community. Time is tight." The ghost of the security guard was somewhat puzzled, but still pointed the way for Yang Fu. Riding on a tricycle on the road, Yang Fu said to the security ghost, "Now I have figured out what your sudden death is all about. It's not an accident, but someone intentionally killed you for the purpose of holding a ceremony. Do you remember the Big Dipper that I just talked about? The Big Dipper is responsible for the death of the person in charge of the Big Dipper, and there are also rumors that the Big Dipper is responsible for the death of the person, that is, you." The security ghost nodded heavily, and now it was no longer so angry, replaced by hatred. It is extremely eager to retaliate against the person who killed it, and to know who that person is, it has to rely on Yang Fu. "If I'm not mistaken, you should be from the Ox family, right?" Yang Fu asked. The security ghost nodded and said, "How do you know?" Yang Fu explained, "Tomorrow is the day of the Ox Rush, and everything is not suitable. If that person wants to enlighten something, the best day is tomorrow at Ding Chou, which is from 1 to 3 in the morning. Actually, it's not just you. If nothing unexpected happens, the other 6 security guards who died this time are all Ox." Speaking, Yang Fu took off his sunglasses and hung them on his chest. Under the illumination of streetlights, his pupils contracted into a spindle shape. "The thing is so simple, someone wants to use your death and soul to enlighten something. Zhuangzi says. Everyone has 7 orifices, which are for food, hearing, sight, and breathing. If a ghost or magical tool opens 7 orifices, it has a human flavor. Chaos opens 7 orifices and dies, and dead things open 7 orifices and live. The person now is trying to enlighten the dead, but fortunately you ran out and prevented them from succeeding. However, they have been busy with so much work and have killed 7 people, so they will definitely not give up easily. I estimate they have already prepared a backup plan." "What backup plan?" the security ghost asked subconsciously. Yang Fu glanced at it and pointed to its body. The security ghost lowered its head and looked at its semi-transparent body, only to react after a while. "Since that crazy guy has already killed 7 people, what about adding another one?" At the thought of this, even though it had become a ghost, the security ghost still felt scared. "Are you rushing over to stop them now?" The security ghost hesitated for a moment and advised, "Why don't you call the police?" "Call the police? What do you want to call the police for?" Yang Fu shook his head and said, "Don't forget, you all died suddenly. Even if I report to the police, no one will believe what I say." The security ghost impatiently grabbed its head and couldn't help but sigh. With so much information, Yang Fu is now able to submit the task, but he wants to try and see if this task can achieve an S rating. Yang Fu rode his bike for almost an hour before reaching the vicinity of Kaitai community. During this time, the villagers even called him to ask why he hadn't returned for so long and if he had encountered something that he had fooled him into saying a few words. The tricycle was parked outside the wall of Kaitai residential area. Yang Fu took out his phone and dialed the phone number that had just informed him of the relevant information. Mr. Yang Fu looked at the railing and wall next to him and said in a low voice, "Please help me investigate the recent situation of Chen Haisheng. The time has been extended to the past 3 months, whether he has lost any relatives or if the company is not doing well." "Okay, please wait a moment." The phone hung up, and Yang Fu waited quietly outside the wall. The ghost of the security guard stood next to him, gazing at the Kaitai community with him. After a while, the security ghost twisted its neck and whispered, Do you feel a bit difficult to breathe? It is already a ghost, theoretically speaking, it doesn't need to breathe at all. But now, it suddenly feels a bit difficult to breathe." Yang Fu glanced at the ghost of the security guard, feeling a bit heavy. "Evil creatures," he said. The yin sha qi gathered in this place is even stronger than the yin sha qi emitted by Luo Fugue, and it is much stronger. Luo Fugue is just a ghost, and it is normal for him to be unable to compare with the yin sha qi gathered through rituals in Kaitai community. Such a strong gathering of yin and evil energy, if that thing opens its 7 orifices in this environment, it will definitely become an evil thing. Regarding evil objects, Yang Fu has only seen them in books. The last recorded appearance of evil objects was over 100 years ago, but he did not expect to have the opportunity to see them with his own eyes. A few more minutes later, Yang Fu's phone rang. "Mr. Yang, we have found that Chen Haisheng's only son passed away due to illness 2 months ago. In addition, his company's business situation is still good and there are not too many risks, thank you." After saying thank you, Yang Fu hung up the phone. Putting down his phone and looking at the railing in front of him, Yang Fu suddenly began to mutter to himself, 2 months ago, Chen Haisheng's only son passed away due to illness. Unable to accept this fact, Chen Haisheng sought help through his network and found a way to revive his son at Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com. He first invested in property management and security companies in Jinyuan community, Kaitai community, and other areas, and recruited multiple security guards in a covert manner, including several guards born in the year of the ox. He arranged these security guards to the designated locations. After a month of deliberation, in order to ensure the integrity of the ghosts of the deceased, he began his plan 5 days ago, September 22nd. The security guards of the 7 zodiac animals born in the year of the ox died suddenly one after another under his calculation, with the aim of using the 7 horizontally dead ghosts as the 7 stars to forcefully open the 7 orifices for their deceased only son and transform into a rebirth. Just because the awakening speed of the ghost of Yu Hengwei exceeded Chen Haisheng's expectations, before Chen Haisheng captured it, the ghost left its original location and went elsewhere. Now Chen Haisheng has to return to Kaitai community and kill another person as a sacrifice to establish the 7 stars. To uncover the truth, investigation progress is 100%, the regular task, Licking Soul, has been completed, and the task reward settlement is in progress. Ordinary quality random item *1 has been stored in the player's bag, players can check it later, player's overall performance. Obtain an additional treasure chest, which, regular, has been stored in the player's backpack. The information about completing the task flashed past my eyes, and a prompt sound immediately sounded in my ears. Task triggering conditions have been met, task type. Regular task, task name. Reverse death and rebirth, task objective. Prevent zombie resurrection, task time limit. 30 minutes, task reward 1. Experience points 100, task reward 2. Game coins 100, task reward 3. Normal quality random equipment *1, accept/reject. Chapter 9. Zombies. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. In the evening, the cool breeze gently brushed against the tree tops, shaking the lush branches and leaves, and the rustling sound seeped into the night. The dark clouds from unknown sources covered the bright moon, casting a huge shadow over the peaceful Kaitai community. Tang Qinxue huddled in the sofa, his eyes fixed on his phone, trying not to let his gaze drift towards the coffin placed in the center of the living room. There are no lights on in the room, only a few oil lamps are lit. The head of the coffin is east, feet are west, and the direction is the same as the Big Dipper of this season. The oil lamp is placed on the lid of the coffin according to the pattern of the Big Dipper. 6 of the 7 oil lamps were lit up, and the remaining one will only be lit up later. I don't know if it's an illusion or if the temperature is not high, even though Tang Qinxue has already passed on a few clothes, he still feels cold and piercing. After taking a glance at time, Tang Qinxue couldn't help but ask, "Master, when can we start?" "It's not yet time." Upon closer inspection, one could see a thin figure sitting cross-legged next to the coffin, swallowing white air. The original furniture in this house has been moved away or moved aside, the living room has been left with coffins, and the sofa where Tang Qinxue sat is placed by the wall. Apart from that, there is only a coffee table with a few magical tools placed on it. Apart from Tang Qinxue and the figure next to the coffin, there are also two people in this house. One is Tang Qinxue's boss, a bodyguard sent by Qin Haisheng, dressed in a black suit and quiet. The other person was placed in a black shroud bag, and he was the sacrifice to be used later. Although the person who took action later was not himself, but the bodyguard, Tang Qinxue still felt a bit nervous. He has been working with Qin Haisheng for over a decade, otherwise he wouldn't have been sent by Qin Haisheng to do this. Nevertheless, it was the first time he had witnessed a person being killed with his own eyes. Of course, seeing the resurrection of the dead is also his first time. Tang Qinxue once thought that this world was scientific, with all kinds of feng shui, physiognomy, and demons and monsters being feudal superstitions and deceptive things. It wasn't until recent months that he realized he was too low level and hadn't been exposed to deeper things in this world. Dong! Suddenly, there was a loud noise coming from the balcony. Everyone in the room who was still awake turned their heads and saw a huge black figure lying outside the balcony window, with a faint light emanating from its head and eyes. But I saw the black figure swing his right arm backwards, suddenly swinging and punching the glass. Bang! The glass shattered in response, and a large amount of debris spilled into the house. Ah! Tang Qinxue screamed, intending to raise his hand to protect his head and close his eyes tightly. The next moment, some glass hit him, causing pain in his skin. Tang Qinxue opened his eyes in fear and saw the black figure outside flip over and jump into the balcony. His eyes lit up and he exclaimed in surprise, "Tiger! It's a tiger!" His howls shattered the silence of the night, startling both those who had fallen asleep and those who had not yet fallen asleep. "Don't shout!" The master sitting cross-legged next to the coffin scolded Tang Qinxue, causing him to shut his mouth. With a blink of his eyes, Tang Qinxue realized that the black figure who had broken into the room was no longer a tiger, but clearly a man of enormous physique. Wearing a white vest, sunglasses hanging on the chest, and muscles stretching the clothes tightly. How did he get up? This is the 7th floor. Tang Qinxue was still in a daze when the bodyguard took out a pistol from his pocket and extended his arm. Click. The broken glass on the ground was crushed, and as soon as the sound came, everyone in the room was stunned. Then, the bodyguard's feet lifted off the ground and suddenly flew backwards. With the loud bang of the body hitting the wall, the whole house seemed to shake for a moment. Tang Qinxue stiffened and turned his neck, his gaze drifting from the empty balcony to his side, gradually bringing the tall figure from the corner of his eye into his orbit. Ha! The heavy breath carried the white breath out of the giant's mouth and flew towards the bodyguard hanging on the wall. A gentle breeze blew, and the bodyguard peeled off the wall. His feet fell to the ground first, and then his knees softened, causing him to kneel on the ground and fall head on. The shimmering eyes rolled and turned their gaze towards the master who had already stood up from the ground. Recently, there have been more and more idiots who don't follow the rules. Which school or faction are you from? The master's expression froze. No door, no faction. As he spoke, the master waved his right hand and a curved sword appeared in his hand, kicking his foot on the ground and bullying him. The blade is sharp, but the master's swordsmanship is not very good. The curved blade reflected a cold light, pulling open the air with one blade after another, but no blade could cut open on the enemy. The enemy, despite having a huge physique, was exceptionally agile, moving their feet and bodies slightly to avoid the blade. 2 or 3 seconds later, the giant caught a flaw in the master's hand and popped out his sword finger with his right hand, tapping it onto the master's wrist. My arm tingled, and with a clang, the curved knife fell uncontrollably to the ground. Seeing the enemy's left hand grabbing towards his own door, the master's face suddenly changed. He took a step back and jumped to the side of the coffin. His left hand slapped the coffin board and shouted, "Get up!" Bang! The coffin board suddenly flew up and hit the ceiling. A pale hand extended from inside the coffin, supporting the side of the coffin and pulling its body out from the inside. Zombie, a young man with pale skin and swollen body, was reflected in his eyes, and Yang Fu whispered to himself. The young man with tightly closed eyes suddenly opened his eyes and shot his body out of the coffin, rushing towards Yang Fu. The nails on both hands of the zombie were sharp, and at the same time, they emitted a foul odor, indicating toxicity at a glance. Yang Fu also extended his hands, starting from behind and grabbing the two wrists of the zombie. Then, his right leg bounced up and his foot was centered on the zombie's chest. The sound of bones exploding suddenly rang out, and under this kick, the zombie's arms and chest bones shattered, and a large depression appeared in the chest. The remaining force penetrated the zombie's spine and kicked its body into a bend. Seeing this scene, the master's eyes burst out in disbelief. At the next moment, Yang Fu threw the zombie with little combat power to the side, took a step out, and suddenly punched the master's head. Dong! A talisman suddenly popped out of the master's chest, transforming into a golden bell that enveloped his entire body. Yang Fu's fist hit Jinzhong, causing Jinzhong to tremble uncontrollably. "Wait!" the master exclaimed in panic. Yang Fu remained unmoved and kept swinging his fists, punching Jinzhong one after another. Dong 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 dong. Bang! When the faces of the two fists became blurred with blood and flesh, Jinzhong was broken and the master was exposed in front of Yang Fu without any protection. The master seemed to want to say something, but was punched by Yang Fu, and all his words were stuck in his throat. He fell to the ground and passed out in a coma. "Don't move." Just then, a voice came from the side. Zhaohuiyuan.com. Yang Fu's ears trembled, his pupils pulled towards the corner of his eyes, and he saw a person squatting next to the unconscious bodyguard, picking up a handgun. Tang Qinxue clenched his pistol in both hands, with the muzzle aimed at the giant standing in the center of the room, and couldn't help but breathe profusely. "Don't move," he repeated again. It may seem like a deterrent, but in reality, Tang Qinxue wanted to make the enemy stand still and aim for himself. He has never learned shooting, and his body is constantly trembling at this moment. The best way to hit the enemy is to make them stand still. Tang Qinxue licked his lips and organized his words in his mind, trying to give the enemy an illusion that he intended to negotiate with him. With his lips and teeth wide open, just as he was about to say something, Tang Qinshue's eyes lit up again, and his fingers instinctively pulled the trigger. Bang! The bullet shot empty, and before Tang Qinxue could be surprised, a sharp pain rushed from his hands into his brain. Ah! Yang Fu kicked Tang Qinshue's gun away, causing him to scream in agony. His speed doesn't need to be faster than bullets, it just needs to be faster than Tang Qinshue's reaction. Oh, the zombie with broken arms and chest bones still wanted to climb up from the ground, but Yang Fu kicked it out and flew it into the wall. At the same time, he took out his phone and dialed the police number. "I want to report to the police. There is someone involved in kidnapping and possession of firearms on the 7th floor of Building 3 in Kaitai Community, Lixiang District. Please call the police as soon as possible." Speaking, Yang Fuduan paused for a moment and added, "By the way, there's also a zombie here. Prevent zombie resurrection, January 1st, the regular task Reverse Death and Rebirth, has been completed, and the task reward settlement is in progress." Chapter 10. Organization. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Name: Yang Fu. Gender: male. Wow. The police officer sitting opposite Yang Fu flipped through the files, and the pages of paper made a clatter. Age: 18. The police officer paused and looked up at Yang Fu deeply. The other police officer sitting next to him coughed lightly and pulled Yang Fu's attention away. He said, "We're not interrogating the prisoner, we just want to know the situation. Before starting the conversation, I'll introduce myself and get to know you. My surname is Gu, and you can call me Officer Gu or Mr. Gu. The person next to me is Zhang, who is slightly older than you. You can call him Officer Zhang or Brother Zhang. Speaking, Gu Qingtang laughed and asked, Comrade, when you reported to the police before, you said you encountered a zombie. Is there only one corpse on site? Yang Fu asked in response. He has great confidence in his control and the resilience of his body, and is confident that he has not killed any living person. Zombies do not count, after all, they are inherently dead and should not appear in this world. Gu Qingtang nodded and said, Indeed, we found a coffin in that room and found traces of it being used for a long time. After we arrived at the scene, the corpse attempted to attack us. At this moment, Zhang Gui took over the conversation and said, What we really want to ask is, how much do you know about the whole thing? Yang Fu pondered for a moment and recounted the conclusion he had drawn in the soul-licking task. Gu Qingtang and Zhang Gui listened quietly without interrupting their questioning midway. Finally, Yang Fu asked in reverse, Are you actually not police officers? At least 5 months have passed since the start of the evolutionary game, and the official must have known about it. It is impossible not to have made any preparations. Although Yang Fu couldn't see how they handled the zombie, their attitude towards the zombie upon arriving at the scene was very ordinary, without any surprise. Upon hearing this, Gu Qingtang and Zhang Gui exchanged a glance. Zhang Gui closed the file and leaned forward slightly, staring into Yang Fu's eyes. Since you have guessed, we don't need to act anymore. Mr. Yang, you need to answer our question. Are you a player? Player. Yang Fu frowned, what does this mean? Perhaps influenced by the tiger demon, or perhaps by nature, he particularly dislikes being bound. Joining the official organization may solve the problem of transforming tigers, but the thought of being bound by various rules makes Yang Fu uncomfortable all over. Moreover, he didn't have a good impression of the two people sitting opposite him, and looking at them, he felt inexplicably wary. Since choosing to survive as an individual player, it is best not to expose one's identity. Fortunately, before becoming a player, he himself was a superhero, so even if he used his power in reality, as long as it did not exceed the limit, he could hide himself well. Gu Qingtang also frowned. In his perception, Yang Fu was like a black hole, absorbing everything without giving any feedback. Skill name. Electrocardiogram induction, type. Spiritual energy, usage. Active, level. Rare, special effects. Forming empathy with a target, perceiving vague thoughts in the other person's mind, consumption. Consumes 1% of spiritual power every 10 seconds, cooling time. There should be a half-hour interval between every 2 targets, note. String your heart my heart together, string a lucky grass, string a concentric circle. Gu Qingtang has already used ECG induction on Yang Fu, but has not received any feedback from him and cannot perceive any of his thoughts. Therefore, it is impossible to determine whether Yang Fu is lying. Zhang Gui paid attention to the situation on Gu Qingtang's side and found that he did not take any action. Following the code set at the beginning, it meant that he did not receive any information from Yang Fu. Holding his glasses, Zhang Gui briefly explained some information about the player and evolution game. After listening, Yang Fu pondered for a moment and whispered, no wonder there has been an increasing trend of unruly guys lately. It turns out it's because of this. To be honest. Gu Qingtang was no longer confused as to why he couldn't hear Yang Fu's voice. He put it aside and smiled, saying, both Xiao Zhang and I are members of the Special Event Investigation and Handling Bureau, abbreviated as the Special Investigation Bureau, established to deal with various sudden special events across the country. Mr. Yang, this time we are talking to you not only to investigate the cause and process of the entire incident, but also to invite you to join our Special Investigation Bureau and become our members. Of course, if you are not willing to join, it is also possible, but we hope you do not disclose our relationship with the evolutionary game. How about, should we consider it? At the next moment, Yang Fu shook his head and refused. No, I'm living quite comfortably now. That's a pity, Gu Qingtang sighed. Zhang Gui took out a piece of paper from under the archives and handed it to Yang Fu. This is the contact information and official website of our Special Investigation Bureau. If you know any news and are unable to handle it yourself, you can contact us through these methods, and we will send someone to handle it. Yang Fu took the paper, glanced at it, and then lifted his head, his gaze colliding with Zhang Gui's gaze. Can I leave now? Gu Qingtang stood up with a smile and said, let me see you off. After seeing Yang Fu off, Gu Qingtang restrained his smile and returned to the original office. Several police officers passed by him on the way, but turned a blind eye to him. In the office, Zhang Gui retrieved surveillance videos and repeatedly observed Yang Fu's every move in the video footage. How did it go? What was the result? Gu Qingtang returned to the office and asked. Zhang Gui shook his head and said, he's not very old and has a lot of experience. When talking to us, he didn't show too much change in expression. Gu Qingtang frowned and listened to Zhang Gui's retort, where are you from? After sighing, Gu Qingtang shook his head and said, I don't know what's blocking my skills on that kid. Anyway, I didn't know what he was thinking. Excuse me. Zhang Gui sighed. Gu Qingtang rolled up his sleeves and glanced at the time, reminding him, it's almost time. It's time to pack up and leave. Upon hearing this, Zhang Gui couldn't help but sigh. Taking their belongings from the table, the two of them left the office together, chatting while walking. Chen Haisheng's line needs to be cut. The original plan was almost successful, but he didn't expect an extraordinary person to come out and disrupt the situation. Just cut it, it's not without a backup plan anyway. It's a pity to have a backup plan. In order to end the situation over there, this stronghold has to be abandoned. In that case, it is true that Zhaoshuyuan.com has provided us with a lot of information and can also intercept intelligence transmitted to the Special Investigation Bureau. Speaking of which, that kid named Yang Fu is really strong. He can climb up the 7th floor bare-handed and even break glass and jump in. There aren't many in the organization who can do this, right? Gu Qingtang and Zhang Gui left the police station, and the police officers in the station woke up from a dream and hung a sign indicating that the office they had just used was idle. After half an hour, 2 armored vehicles drove into the police station, and a group of people wearing combat uniforms stepped out of the vehicles and quickly entered the office building. The leader, dressed in a black suit and wearing a pair of sunglasses on the bridge of his nose, led the team to the office door with the idle sign hanging. He waved his hand and a combat member holding a round shield walked forward, suddenly knocking open the door. Behind the round shield team members, a group of combat personnel lined up and walked into the office. After they walked in, they only saw a pile of scattered paper fragments on the ground. The whiteboard next to the wall may have painted something, but by now it had been wiped clean. Mirror flow. The captain of the action team took off his sunglasses and frowned. This is an organization that existed before the start of the Evolutionary Game, and has caused several troubles to the Special Investigation Bureau since the game began. Although the Special Investigation Bureau has captured members of Mirror Flow, they are all peripheral members and have limited knowledge of intelligence. Captain. The team member who went to investigate the surveillance of the office building came to the office and told the captain some bad news. All monitoring related to members of Mirror Flow has been blocked. The captain remained silent and silently clenched his fist. Let them escape again.